what up, everybody? It's Rama Screen, and it's time for another interview segment. And the other day, I got to talk with Jessica Sutton, the co-star of this new film, Rogue, which will be available on digital August 28th and on Blu-ray September 1st. And today, I have the opportunity to talk with the director of that film, none other than MJ Bassett. How are you doing, MJ?
I'm really good, darling. How are you?
Good, good, good. Thank you for taking the time. Now, this is such an awesome film. I enjoyed it very much. Jessica told me of how you approached her with this project and that you wanted to shoot it in South Africa. But I also read that this was initially supposed to be a small passion project that you and your daughter wrote. Could you briefly walk us through the evolution of that?
Well, I mean, it is still a really, really small movie in terms of budget. I always say that the budget for Rogue was probably the same as the catering budget for Transformers. You know, it's a tiny little picture that I hope punches way above its weight. And it came about because I have a lifelong passion and interest in natural history and conservation. So all the way back to my childhood, I wanted to be a vet more than anything in the world. I wanted to be a wildlife vet in Africa. And I was a veterinary assistant all the way through my teenage years while I was still at high school. I then trained as a wildlife photographer and filmmaker. I've flown falcons, I've run a wildlife hospital, I've worked in zoos. I was on screen in the UK hosting wildlife documentaries and programs when I was still a teenager, in fact. And then I went down this weird route of making films and TV, this kind of genre heavy, like horror and sci-fi and action stuff. And it's taken like 25 years of a career to bring my passion, my private passions for natural history onto the screen whilst preserving my love of blowing shit up and shooting guns and driving cars and things. So that's how Rogue sort of became what it is. It was supposed to be a small movie. My producing partner on this, wonderful woman called Molly Hassel, we never worked together, but been friends for a long time. She said to me, hey, I think I might have some money from Lionsgate to make sort of low budget movies with like an eco theme. I know that you know lots about this subject. Would you like to be an executive producer and kind of godmother them through with some first time filmmakers? And I said, no, I want to make them. And she was like, yeah, but there's no money. And I said, I don't really care about the money because I just love to do what I do. And I was making a decent living directing TV and those kinds of things. And I thought it was about time I really made something that was important to me. So we came up with a deal. And I said, I want real creative control. I want to produce, write, and direct along with her. And my daughter, who's a writer, I said, I want to bring Isabel on board to kind of just help me with the script and just give me a younger woman's point of view on the whole thing. So I'd written an outline for the story. I gave her the treatment and said, hey, Izzy, I'm busy directing some TV. Can you just, give me a first draft? We call it a vomit draft. Give me whatever comes to mind. Write this thing the way you would. And she doesn't like genre stuff very much. So she brought a really fresh kind of dramatic approach. I love what she did. I then entirely rewrote what she did. And then she beat me up for that. And then we argued our way to a final draft, which kind of went out to the world. We got ourselves a green light. Built the cast, built the movie, went to South Africa and shot it.
Oh, lovely. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to go right to the heart of the matter here. The lions in this film scared the bejeebus out of me. Lions are terrifying in general. I mean, I noticed that some in this film may have been CG and some may have been, real life lions. Can we talk a bit about shooting or filming with the lions and combining both methods? And also, how did you get the most terrified reactions from your actors for those scenes?
Well, when you make a movie with an animal in it, I because I'm so concerned about animal welfare, I didn't really want to use real animals. We talked about it, and there's two things that mean that working with animals is particularly large predators. And I've worked with lions before. I worked with lions and leopards and tigers in my kind of other lives. First of all, film sets are very stressful environments for animals. As a director, there's like the compassionate MJ, the human being. And then there's the director who really wants to get the shot, right? And as the director who wants to get the shot, I'm like, push. And I'll do that with actors. And you can't do that with an animal that doesn't understand. You're just trying to get it to behave in a certain way so that you can tell your story. So the only live lions in the movie, the only real lions in the movie at the very, very beginning sequence, and the lion cubs at the end as well. Everything else is digital or puppet work. And the those lions that we use at the beginning, they actually lived on the game farm where we were shooting the movie. So they lived, they're there, and their paddocks were actually next to the cottage that I was living at the time. So I would hear them roaring every evening. It was this incredible pride, just roaring. It's like the most wonderful sound. So then knowing that I had to use CG on a very small movie. So the problem was I literally had a list of shots that I could use, no more. There was no wiggle room. We had to design them, and with a South African company, and figure out how the hell do you work with get a performance from a creature that's not there. Now, luckily, Megan Fox has done lots of running away from CG robots. And most of the actors these days sort of understand that. But I would play like lion roars on the set. I would try and get the sense of how dangerous these animals are, because you don't really understand the nature of these super, alpha predators in nature. They are so dangerous. And that's why one of the reasons you can't use real lions is because I wanted them to be in predatory mode. And anybody who works with, if a lion's in a predatory mode, somebody's dead. It's as simple as that. Can't do that. Therefore, I would only ever get like pussycat performances, which I didn't want anyway. So yeah, it was CG. We had a couple of puppet heads built so that when a lion is like biting an actor, they could be, really physically interacting with it, because that's the hardest bit with CG, like that kind of contact there, and then plotting the shots and trying to get it to work. And sometimes you have to remind that no, they're much more frightening. You would be more frightened. And then we go and look at the lion enclosure and go, yeah, it's on the other side of the wire, and you're still intimidated. So it's just remembering that. And then the other thing that's super important for me is that the lions are not monsters. In this movie, they're animals she is an animal doing what she has to do. And I think when you watch the movie, you'll understand. I don't want to sort of spoil it for anybody, but she's not a monster. She's not thinking about how am I going to kill them. They are an obstacle for her. Yep. The real baddies in this movie are humans, as is almost always the case.
That's right.
An animal's not a bad thing. An animal has no agenda. It needs to eat, or it needs to protect itself. And then I didn't want to do for lions what Spielberg did to sharks, turn them into a villain. Yes, they're frightening. Don't mess with them, but leave them alone. They'll leave you alone. On the whole, I mean, lions have killed people. Let's not beat around the bush, and people do die every year. But it's a predator-prey relationship, which I think is, really compelling and really interesting.
Now, you touched on this earlier, but I gotta dive deeper here. Most people recognize Megan Fox from Transformers movies. This is a different Megan Fox. And so in your collaboration, in your conversation with her, how did you work with Megan to shape her character, who is this battle-hardened, tough cookie, mercenary leader?
Yeah, you wouldn't think Megan would do that at all. Even me, I went into this when we'd written the script. Isabel and I had written the script. It turned out pretty well. People were excited and said, you could get a name for the lead. And it's like, no, this is a tiny little movie. And I'm like, why not? Why not try and get somebody who can give you a bigger profile? And to be fair, Megan has absolutely done that for this movie. We wouldn't be talking about this movie if Megan Fox wasn't the name above the title, right? So I know the value of a name, but at the same time, you don't want to miscast it. You don't do something which is going to unbalance the picture. So we wrote the script, and then Megan's name was on a list of actresses. And I sort of went, I don't see her doing this. And then somebody, my casting director went, you know what? Stop. Think about this for a second. Wouldn't it be interesting if she was capable of doing this and interested in doing this? So we sent the script. And 24 hours later, she said she was really interested, which I've never had a response that quick from a big name ever, right? And luckily, I went to meet her, and she's not at all the person I was expecting. She's a very quiet, very thoughtful, very open person. She's a mother of 3 kids. She's, was in a relationship at the time, and she was very interested in moving the needle on how the public perceived her. And I think so. There were 2 things that she was interested. She was interested in the conservation aspect because she's an environmentalist, and also she wanted to do something which was very much outside her comfort zone and natural wheelhouse. She understands she has a very youthful, feminine energy, and I didn't want that at all. That's not her character. I didn't want that. So with an actor, it's like, yeah, this is what you bring to the table. I actually don't want any of what you bring to the table. Let's try and do something different. And I think that was a challenge she liked. Now, it was a very small movie in the sense that it had a very short schedule. So we shot for 21, 22 days. I didn't have her for very long. So in that time, we had to train her up. So I'm a military advisor, and myself and another ex-Marine who's a friend of mine. We went to the range with her. We taught her tactics and weapon handling. And I've done lots and lots of military stuff, so I'm very comfortable with that as well. So we spent a few days trying to knock her into shape. But I also surrounded her with a cast of actors who have done military stuff with me. So Philip Winchester, who plays Joey Kaczynski, who's a male lead in the movie, has done so much military stuff. And I know he's completely capable and authentic in every way. So he was there to support her. And Brandon Orette, who has served in the South African military, and other cast members have done as well. So Megan needed to not be intimidated by that and allow herself to be supported by it and play that kind of disaffected, somewhat disconnected soldier, and that her femininity was irrelevant and inconsequential to me and to the character at the beginning of the movie. Her journey is to realize that you can be a badass woman and not lose that maternal aspect of yourself. And that's kind of why I think she was interested in it. And I think she pulls it off. She does really, really well in the movie.
My time is running out, but as I'm winding down to my final questions, I got to ask you this. Because this movie points to two things, right? Lion conservation and raising awareness about human trafficking. So how did you and Isabel strike the balance between those two big themes effectively in your storytelling to convey it to the audiences?
Well, the primary story I'm looking at telling is the animal, how we treat the world, how we treat animals. And lions are this, I'm using the lion element as a small part of that story, the notion of lion farming, the killing of these creatures for their body parts, for traditional medicines, just to be used in canned hunting, for the cubs to be used in the tourist industry. And it's happened to tigers, it's happening to lions, but it speaks to a larger issue of how we treat the animals around us. Whether you're farming, bears for their gallbladders, pangolins for their scales, rhinos for the horn, it's all of those things. The human trafficking element is a slightly smaller aspect, but weirdly enough, generally speaking, the people who deal in wildlife parts and wildlife trafficking are also involved in human trafficking, generally involved in drug dealing, weapons and gun running. So it's just transnational crime on a grand scale. So it's all of those things, so trying to make sure that there's two things going on. And I love the fact you talked about the human trafficking thing, because nobody else really touches on that. It's like, what happens to these people, whether it's a white Western girl or somebody from another culture who's being used and abused and trafficked, and it's all bad, right? So the movie can make you have 100 minutes of really entertaining, great time. It's funny, it's action packed, it's scary, all those things. And at the end of the movie, you stop and you go, yeah, I hadn't thought about those other things. If I can get a dozen people to think, then it's been worth it for me.
Can I ask you one last final question?
Go for it.
All right. As a fan of Halo, I know that's one of your next big projects. What can you tell us, hint-wise, teaser-wise, about what we can anticipate from this live-action series?
Okay, there's two things you need to know. One is I'm not doing Halo anymore because COVID messed with my schedule and I cannot go back to the show. And I'm absolutely heartbroken because, and the other thing is, it's going to be massive. It's going to be, Pablo Schreiber is going to be an amazing Master Chief. He's so focused on this thing. The designs are amazing. The scripts are terrific. It's going to be a gigantic, huge show. If you're a fan, it does explore different things, but the mythology, 343, the games company's all over it. They're throwing massive resources at this thing. It's going to be amazing. I'm heartbroken that I can't go back to it, but I can't because I'm going off to make another movie tomorrow. So, something's given, something's taken away, but I think you're going to be really interested with what they do with it. And I've seen a couple of the episodes, a very rough cuts of the episodes, and they're epic. They're huge.
Oh my God, I can't wait. Well, everybody go watch Rogue on digital August 28th and on Blu-ray September 1st. MJ Bassett, thank you so much for talking with me, and congratulations.
Thank you.